Prakash, both your books have done exceedingly well. The Secret of Leadership has recently been launched. It's already doing very well. Some great reviews. What has been your sort of common strand, between The Habit of Winning and The Secret of Leadership?
The common thread for me, I think, is really two or three things. The first is really a belief that, there is actually a winner inside each of us. There's a leader inside each of us. The problem is we are all trying to lead somebody else's life. And we are all trying to become something we are not. So think about it. I've always been fascinated by this. If you have a little kid who's, let's say, plays a decent game of football, can really kick the ball well and could just become the Ronaldo India is looking for. And imagine that he's also a good writer and, writes these very affectionate letters to his grandma. And he's weak in maths. So what do we do with him? Send him to maths tuition. Yeah? We don't ask him to become a great footballer. We don't ask him to say, you might just become the next Jeffrey Archer. We say, go for maths classes. Unless you get that right, you're going to be a no-gooder. So what happens is, I think we all end up spending our lives worrying about our weaknesses, worrying about what we don't have, worrying about those missing pieces in our life, rather than focusing on our strengths and saying, our best chance of success is really to focus on our strengths and be the person we were meant to be. And what's common to both these books is really the fact that I've used stories to kind of make the point. So in these books, there are no fancy theories or, huge jargon around what you must do, or the neuropsychosomatic science which will change the way you think of the world. None of those things. What I've got are stories, simple stories, stories from cricket, stories from the animal world, stories from the world around us, little stories which I'm hoping actually make a point which people can relate to. And the way I see this, I've been lucky. I've had a chance to work with lots of wonderful people, and I've learned a fair bit. And as I look around, I often feel, why is it that some people have so much promise and don't quite deliver? And equally, why is it that some people, seemingly ordinary folks, end up proving to be fantastic chaps, do well, happy, successful? So what makes the difference? I think the difference is really, something that's happening over here. It's about how you think. It's also about how you work with people. So I guess that's really what I've got as the common link between the two.
Interesting. And, so Habit of Winning was a few years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And let's talk a little bit about your own sort of journey in the last 2 years. I don't mean in your corporate career, but as an author, as somebody who's been thinking about issues related to winning or high performance or leadership. What's been keeping your sort of thinking process going and, your mind occupied related to the books, related to the subject of leadership, related to winning?
So I guess what's been happening over the last 2 years, and indeed before that, has been the fact that I look around and I keep finding stories. So, it's stuff that's happening around you. It's conversations that you might have. And as you listen into people, you start saying, hey, as I'm talking to somebody or as I see something else, maybe this applies in a very different way to our lives too. So it could be a game of cricket and something may be happening over there and you hear a line and suddenly you say, that line is very powerful and you could probably use it, in a very, very different context. So I'll just give you an example. The other day I was talking to somebody and, someone said that there's a question being asked, which is why do homes in Amsterdam have large windows? And someone gave an answer, which is that, so that people keep their houses clean. Okay, if you have a large window, you have no place to hide, and you better keep your house clean. And so my mind would work on that and say, maybe there's an idea here. All of us must see ourselves as Amsterdam homes and have large windows. Because then, there's no room for hatred. There's no room for deceit. There's no room to kind of do all the naughty stuff. Because, hey, you've got large windows. You better keep your house clean. So I think I keep looking for stories around me. And I find that, there are lots and lots of stories around us. Just some time back, I was in Mumbai and I hailed a taxi. And, it was interesting. In those days, all of you here from Mumbai, I'm guessing. So, we've had these for years. We've had these wonderful, rickety, 40-year-old premier Padminis on the street as taxis, those black and yellow cabs. And suddenly, a couple of years ago, you had the little Marutis coming in and the Hyundais coming onto the road. And I distinctly remember waiting for a cab. And I said, I'll wait for one of these newer cabs. Didn't want to take the old one. And I got into the cab, and as is a habit, I started talking to the cabbie, and I said, you must be having a great time because I'm sure people wait to get a cab like yours. He looks at me, he says, quite the contrary. He says, because my cab looks so good, people think we are more expensive. So he says, the man on the street doesn't hail me. He raises his hand when he sees the black and yellow, and he sees new car, he puts his hand down. Waits for an old car. Why? Because he thinks the car is more expensive. So they started writing at the back of the car, same fare. They started saying same fare. Now, I said, hey, that's interesting. And then I asked myself, aren't we all like this? We look at people and we jump to conclusions. If the person is like this, then he must be ... We fill it up with what we want to say. And I think our minds get cluttered, and we always look at this shiny new cab and say, it must be expensive. And I think we don't give people a chance. It happens at work, it happens in relationships. We see someone and we say, if the person looks like this, he must be like that. And we jump to conclusions. So I think that's really what happens.
Yeah. So a lot of stereotyping.
Lots of stereotyping.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about your first book. Mm-hmm. And then we'll sort of come to the recent one. So when you're talking about the habit of winning, are you at some level also trying to say that this is something more innate that comes from within? Or would you also say that part of it can be tutored or hammered into, let's say, a child or an individual, right? So if we were to look at, let's say, cricket, right? Why do we see, the same individual performing brilliantly well for a certain spell of time, or doing shoddily for another spell of time? So is it that the habit has not been inculcated well enough? Can we do something around it? So, sorry, I didn't want to pose that as a question to you,
Sure.
but just as a thought to say.
Yeah, it wasn't a question. I mean, there's lots of merit in what you just said. Kumar, so I'll tell you that I just pick on a phrase you used. Is it something that it's got to be hammered into? And my submission is, it doesn't have to be hammered into.
Right.
It's got to be eased out. It's already there. And I think the mistake all of us make is that what's inside is a bit of a fixed deposit that we are saying, don't touch that. And we keep looking for something which is outside. And my favorite story, in this is about how, in Florence, in Italy, there's this statue of David. And it's a piece of marble, single rock, 20-odd feet tall. And the story goes that that piece of marble had been lying for many years. And they kept showing it to sculptors, saying, would you like to make something out of it? Many people looked at it and said, nah, this is a flawed piece of marble. Nothing can be made out of it. Okay? And then young Michelangelo came along and said, okay, let me give it a shot. And he took this piece of marble to his workshop and got to work on David. And one night while he was at work, a little girl walked up to him, and here was Michelangelo sitting on that rock and, hammering away. And she asked him, why are you hitting that rock so hard? And he looks at her and he says, you know what? There's an angel inside. I'm just helping set it free. I think that's true for all of us. There is an angel inside. There's a winner inside each of us. Problem is, it's got, hidden with all this unwanted pieces of marble. And what most of us do is to try and say, what do I need to take in? What else can I get from outside to become a better person? Whereas chances are, just get someone to chip away some of those unwanted pieces of marble, and that winner inside, that leader inside will actually emerge and come out. And I think, I think that these books are really like a sculptor's toolkit. It's got a hammer and a chisel, which is really stories. And hopefully these stories will help to kind of take away some of those pieces of, unwanted marble to allow the person inside you to emerge. And I think that's really the way I would look at it.
This is very well put in terms of bringing the leader out. Let's hear a couple of those stories from either of your books on winning or leadership. I think your storytelling is really mesmerizing.
That's a big word. I wouldn't. No. So I'll tell you what. So let me start with something. I'm not sure if you've read the first book. Shh, don't answer. Okay. Yeah, but I have a story. I start off by asking a question. If two people want to climb a mountain, what's the most important thing they need? Attitude, right? So I think it's a great answer. You'd say it's attitude. You must have the right attitude because that's very important. What else? Teamwork. I think it's a big one because, and it's often said in India, one person has to do something very easy. Two people, tough. Because you've got to now worry about teamwork, worry about getting to work with the other guy, but certainly teamwork is extremely important. What else? Presentation. Sorry? Presentation? Yeah, maybe you need to be able to present. You need to try and say, hey, What does it take to get to the mountain? Why, so that's an important one. Sorry, you were saying something else? Physique. Never mistake it. We all think attitude is all, but a lot of things you need to be tough. And increasingly, I think being healthy, being fit is important. If two people want to climb a mountain, what's the most important thing they need? Skill. Sorry? Perseverance. You need perseverance because it can get tough. The weather will be bad. You need to kind of stay with the course and get there. So you know what? We can have all these answers, but here's my submission. If two people want to climb a mountain, the most important thing they need is the mountain. We all need a mountain in our lives. We need a goal. You need something that you want to get to. The problem for most of us is that we are busy, trying to get better equipment, saying, I want a larger cylinder, I want a 32 GB. We're looking for bigger equipment. We're looking for better training. We're saying, oh no, I must go to that IIM, which is, Indian Institute of Mountaineering. I must go there and I must study there. Or we start saying, you know what, I'm unlucky. See, the weather is bad today. You can't see anything. Visibility is poor. So we blame the environment. We blame our training. We blame our upbringing. We blame our resources don't have enough. Not true. All you need is the mountain. And if you have a mountain in your life, suddenly the weather doesn't matter. Okay, it'll be a cold day. You'll get up and say, it doesn't matter. If it's cold in the morning and cloudy, the afternoon will get sunny. Okay, if you don't have equipment, you'd say, it doesn't matter. Yeah, there are enough people. Let's see what happens. You can climb a mountain without something maybe. And suddenly people, circumstances start conspiring in your favor and nothing else matters. So I think it's important. You need to find a mountain in your life. And I think that's pretty much the first thing that you'd want to do.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So really looking towards a goal in your life that you want to achieve, whether on a day-to-day basis or, just your life ambition, if you will. Moving on to the secret of leadership, I'm sure you would have, taken a lot of your own life experiences, being a corporate leader and having led organizations. Let me switch gears for a little while onto organizational leadership, right? So not just the leader within, an individual, but in terms of leading teams and organizations and companies. What are your thoughts on, some of your experiences or maybe, your favorite anecdotes around that?
Yeah, so I'll try and take one story perhaps to try and tell you what I think of how we lead teams and organizations. And I dare say that's probably true even when it comes to, leading maybe children. As parents, in a sense, kids look up to us as that leader. We don't always realize it because the paycheck doesn't come, but but certainly kids see us that way. So I'll tell you what, as leaders, we all get caught up in telling people what they need to do. So we are getting directive. We keep telling them what they need to do, and we spend a lot of our time thinking we have all the answers. I'll tell you what you need to do. We spend a lot of time telling our teams how to do it. Okay, so we think, been there, done that. You know what? That's something simple. I've done it for 20 years. So let me tell you how to do it. Let me show you how to do it. So we spend a lot of time telling people how to do it. We get caught up in this entire system of reward and punishment. So we use a carrot and a stick, and we tell people if you do well, big bonuses. Don't do well, I'll sack you. So you use fear almost to try and lead teams. But I think what you don't use often enough, and what can actually be more powerful, is to tell people why they must do something. Give people a strong why, and suddenly you'll find that the how and the what will take care of itself. And I think there's a big power in why, and most of us don't use it enough. We don't tell people, and like I said, we don't tell kids why they must do something the way we tell them. We tell them what they must do, we tell them how to do it, we use reward and punishment. And I'll tell you a little story which probably illustrates this, and like I said, the reason I like stories is A, they make a point, and B, I think they're memorable. So, long after you've left this room and gone away, you may not remember this bit about, pata nahi kuch bol raha tha, how, what, why. I'm not sure which of them he said was the more important one, but he said one of them, I'm sure. But let me tell you a story, and maybe that'll make the point. Okay, the Andhra Pradesh State Road Transport Corporation, okay, one of these government bodies that runs the state transport buses, had a problem. They run something like 18,000 buses on the streets of Andhra Pradesh every day. And they had an increasing rate of accidents. So, newspapers were full of stories about, one more bus crashing into a valley somewhere, going off the road, killing somebody. Clearly bad news for them. So they did something. They took a major initiative to try and improve their safety record. And in 6 months, and for several years, they tried stuff, nothing worked. And then they did something, and in 6 months, the accident rate fell dramatically. It fell from like a 0.13 per 10,000 kilometers to 0.09, if I remember the numbers right, but like a significant reduction. Now, what do you think they did? Now, if you ask this question to any corporate guy, he'll tell you they must have, come down heavily on drunken driving, or, they must have created this magic radar. If the guy goes over 80, catch him, slam him, sack him. Okay, then they'll say, no, HR department is there. They'll say, you know what, there's this great trainer sitting in Harvard. Let's call him in, or let's get this the guy who can talk psychology and get people to say, motivate these drivers. That's what we all think is where are we focused? We're focused on how to do it. We're focused on what to do. We're focused on punish the guy. The APSRTC guys did none of these. They did something very simple. They got each driver to put a photo of his family on the dashboard. That was it. And the rate of accidents actually dropped. And I think we need to respect other people and give them a strong enough reason why they must do something. And in this case, if the driver knows that he's got that little kid and that lady waiting at home for him, suddenly, I think he starts doing things differently. You don't need to teach him that overspeeding kills. You don't need to teach him that overtaking incorrectly is dangerous. That picture there reminds him of a good enough reason why he should do all those things. So I think a why is a very, very powerful idea.
So really you're talking about giving people a sense of purpose,
yep,
right, in whatever they do. And that, I guess that is one of the qualities of leadership, is to give people a sense of purpose and let them be.
Yeah, Kumar, the only difference I'd make is that very often a sense of purpose becomes like this one big overriding vision or an idea, that we are not, we are part of Disneyland. We are not here to make money out of rides. We're here to make people happy. Now that's a good, like a 30,000-foot vision statement to have, sure, which is purpose.
Right.
But I think in a lot of our day-to-day interactions, we get very quickly into a directive mode. Okay? No one ever told a kid, when you tell a kid, stop playing, I will not let you play another half an hour of that video game, or, stop playing on your computer. We are very good at telling people what to do. Maybe we should all pause and spend some time on saying, why should you do that? And I think giving people a reason to do it rather than telling them what to do.
Sure. In terms of the secret of leadership on your latest book, as you would agree, there are, loads and loads of books on leadership. I haven't read too many, but I can tell you I keep wondering whether, with the standard question, is it something that can be taught, or is it something that just, you're born with, or it's innate?
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear your sort of views on both of these aspects, because
sure, I
would tend to think that there's some elements of it that you can refine and teach, if you will, and some part of it that either you have it or you don't.
Yeah. So, one smart guy once said that, you can learn leadership by reading a leadership book as easily as you can learn swimming by reading a book on swimming. So I don't think, so this is, the way I'd look at it is that there are several books on leadership. I don't think this is a book which is, again, trying to say, that's the way to do it, 7 principles, 9 ideas.
Exactly.
It's not trying to do that.
Yeah.
It's a collection of 60 stories, everyday stories. But each of those stories probably rings a bell somewhere in your head. And I think what it does is to kind of remind you of something you already knew. So it's not as if this is rocket science and this has got to be done very differently. It's often very simple. But the problem is that we forget the simple stuff. And we tend to think of it, as something that, oh no, it's a very external problem. It's not me. It's got to do with, and we find something to blame. And that becomes the problem. So to come back to your question on, is it innate, or is it something that can be taught? I think my premise is that it is innate in the sense that everybody is a leader. There is a leader inside each of us. Now, it so happens that some people run companies, some people run teams, some people run armies, but we all lead our lives, okay? So in that sense, we are all leaders of our own lives. And how good a life is clearly depends on the leader. So it just depends on you, and it's about what you are. And I think we owe it to ourselves to be the best we can be. And the mistake we can make is to keep looking at someone else and saying, my goodness, he is so good. And we all look at other people and feel that person is so good. But like someone said, try and get Sachin Tendulkar to come home and solve a maths equation, he won't be able to do that, right? And, you know, and this can go on. But what happens is we look at other people and we think, you know what, we are not good enough. And I think all I'm trying to do is to say that, you know what, there is a terrific you inside you. Let's just get that guy out. Let's just get that girl out. And that's what's going to make it successful. Don't spend your life trying to become something else. Just try and be the person you are. Look, focus on your strengths, believe in yourself. But hey, I'm also saying that one of the big things that we tend to discount is our ability to work with other people. And very often it becomes fashionable to say, you know, I'll do it myself. And I'll be a lone ranger. Now, these are popular in Western movies, but lone rangers don't really work. And I think it's important for all of us to recognize that you need to learn to get along with other people. And if you help other people to achieve their goals, chances are, you know, you'll achieve your goals that much faster. So rather than being focused on I, me, myself, I think focus on other people, and suddenly the world will change for you.
So one of the things you're talking about is leadership and sort of working with others, empowering others, maybe from an organizational perspective, getting the job done.
Yep.
Right? And it's not just about the person, you know, that one individual. I'm compelled to think that, you know, given the fact that you have this vast corporate experience behind you and you've sort of led companies before and you currently do, there's a lot of leadership and sort of traits of leadership that we would imagine get honed, you know, over time and over your own personal experiences, and not necessarily because the way you are. And I don't mean you individually, but any person. So it is these dots on your timeline of 25 years, 30 years, 40 years as an individual, as a, you know, corporate honcho, which gives you lessons, not just in terms of the things you did right, but in terms of the things you could have done better. Have you tried to sort of tell your readers some of those aspects in this book?
Without necessarily admitting to it?
Sure.
The answer is yes. So it's not like I'm saying, I don't think this book is about that's how I did it, or that's what worked for me. I'm just giving you examples, but I think you probably hit the nail on its head, that a lot of these stories are really stories that have either worked for me or have worked for people I've known or I've seen with other people. So I think, so it's a lot, it's really built out of what I've seen around me. And I then try and use that and say, look, hey, this can make sense. And I think it's interesting the way these things get born. And I'll give you another example. There's a story in this.
Please do.
In this, if I might.
Yeah.
So there are lessons, you know, there's something in this book about lessons from a tea bag. Okay, now, it's silly if you think about it. You know, you have a tea bag, and what can a tea bag teach you about leadership? And most of us tend to think that if you need to learn leadership, it has to be from some, you know, higher authority, some guy who's been a great leader. Not true. And if you think hard, you'll find that a tea bag, a humble tea bag, can actually teach you a lot of lessons. And, you know, I'll just share a couple of them. So I'll start with one, which is, you know what? The true test of character of a person is revealed when he's under pressure. And if you think about it, the true flavor of a tea bag actually emerges when you dip it in hot water. It's only when you put a tea bag in hot water that you'll realize how good the tea bag is. And I think that's a good test for all of us. Our true character, our true strength actually gets revealed when you're under pressure. How do you behave when you're under pressure? How do you tackle your life when you come under the hammer? I think that's a good test of how it might be. And as leaders and as people who might lead organizations, here's another interesting one to learn. You know, no one ever drank a cup of tea and then said, wow, that was a great tea bag. You drink the tea and you say, wow, that was a nice cup of tea, right? So I think leaders need to remember this. You can make the mistake of focusing on yourself and thinking that people must say at the end of it, what a great leader. No one says that. You want people to say, what a great team, what a great organization, what a great institution this man has built. So you've got to focus on the tea rather than be focused too much on the tea bag itself.
That's really interesting. That would then talk about, you know, the end result, if you will. So what is leadership culminating into, if you will? You know, so the tea as in the experience for the consumer, or you know, I don't mean consumer in terms of markets, but for the person consuming the tea.
Yep.
Right? So as a leader, what have you been able to empower others to deliver? That's the message I think this anecdote is talking about. Sure. And that's a powerful one. If you're able to relate that anecdote to say, every time I do an action, how is it going to result in something favorable for others, right? Or how can I, empower people to be behaving favorably for the organization, for the team, for the company, or, to other individuals?
That's right. And not on if I did that, what would it do to me, to my CV, to my stock options, to my bonuses, to my reputation. So I think we can all get caught up in thinking it's all about me when it's actually all about them.
Right, right. So at this time, I think we should open the floor to some questions.
I just want to start with a small little anecdote. There was a story about in Sweden how people in the subway used the escalator a lot. So they try to figure out how to stop them from using it. I don't know why, but yeah, they tried. So what they did is on the steps, they tried. Now Sweden is like really intelligent and all. So technologically, what they try to do is create a piano of sorts on the steps. So like a white, black kind of a thing. And playfully, somehow, when people started walking on the steps, there was a sound, and nobody used the escalator at all. So my question is that leadership, corporate as well as from the government point of view, public as well as the private sector, why don't we do things like that in our country? Why not? Because, so many of us, we are creative, we can find out awesome creative solutions to things.
Yeah.
Why not?
First, I think it's a great story of what they might have done in Sweden. I think I would probably say that we all need to be a little more bullish about ourselves, a little more optimistic about our country. And, chances are these things are happening in our country, probably not getting enough media coverage. And as soon as they get over, scams and, God forbid, the landslides and all the other bad news that's on the newspapers, they'll find such stories. That's I think, happening. And like I said, if I take the example of the Andhra Pradesh State Road Transport Corporation, here's a government body hugely maligned by everybody, but they came up with something interesting. And I think it's happening. But let me give you another part to it, which is, young people like you are the one who's going to create that piano on a staircase someday in this country. And that's what's going to make a difference. Don't wait for the government. Don't wait for someone else. And I think for all of us, a large part of the story of leadership is really to say, take charge of your own life. Do what you need to do. Don't wait for someone else to do it for you. Don't blame. For most of us, we have an option, which is, and our default option is blame. If you can blame someone for something, freedom. Now I don't have to worry. Didn't clear my entrance exam? Yeah, my dad didn't send me to those expensive classes. Didn't get that job? Yeah, I don't have influence. So what happens is that you start blaming someone, then you don't have to worry about, hey, what do I need to do to get better? But the minute you don't blame someone, you start saying, hey, I need to take charge of my life. What can I do? And therefore, I'd strongly urge you to say, I think you have a great story there. And I'm guessing that there's a lot of good work happening in this country because young people are saying, you know what, I will make that difference. It's not about saying, curse the government or curse somebody else or say, blame it on poverty in this country or population. We can't fix those problems easily, but we can all do our bit. And I think someday, I can see already you're wearing a jacket which looks like a piano, so, we're going to get there. We're going to get there.
We all go through phases wherein we are led by someone, but they are not really the kind of right people in some or the other ways. We figured that out. But the thing is, it's not always comfortable for a lot of people to leave their jobs or just because the boss is like, not a very good guy. So I wanted to know, my question is like, how do we deal with such situations wherein you can take charge, but everything, that like you have to start things from scratch. And a lot of people don't have the, those guts. So what is that one thing that like, you could advise for people to, follow on?
There's a little story over here in this book about how to catch a rabbit, okay? And I'll try and link that back to what you've just asked me. So imagine you're in, the story goes like this, that imagine you're in a garden and there are lots of little rabbits running around and you want to catch a rabbit, okay? How do you go about doing it? So what do? You say, you see, so many rabbits, must be damn easy to catch a rabbit. So you say, there's a nice fat white one, let me catch it. So you start running after it, but the rabbit's just a step ahead of you. And you can't catch it, and you try and you can't, it still goes ahead of you. And then you see this brown rabbit come close to you. and you say, brown is my favorite color anyways. So you start chasing the brown rabbit, and then you start chasing the brown rabbit, and it starts, that now starts going a little further ahead. And then, before you can catch it, you see this little gray guy come close to you, and you say, I just read in that magazine, gray is the color of the season. So now you start chasing the gray rabbit. And, this goes on from white to brown to gray to spotted. And at the end of the day, you say, my goodness, I'm so tired. I've been working so hard. I've been chasing rabbits all day long. And how many rabbits have you caught? None. Okay? So I think the trick is simple. If you want to catch a rabbit, identify one rabbit, focus on it, okay? And just go after that rabbit, put it in your pocket, and then worry about the next one. The mistake many of us who go to work, the mistake we make is, you get a boss, and you say, boss is not right. I want to get out of here. Yeah, this is not the job for me. So I'll quit this job and I'll go somewhere else. And guess what happens over there? You know what? The culture is not right. So then you quit the culture, then you know what? You go to this next organization. Good job, but your career prospects are not good. So in 5 years, you've changed 4 jobs, haven't learned much, and guess what? Now you've seen a bad boss, a bad organization, a bad culture, a bad career progression plan. Doesn't work like that. So I think don't get into this, because again, I'm going back to that point that, we externalize the problem. I'm not happy in this job because I have a bad boss. The best thing that can happen to us in life is to get a bad boss, because it's your best chance to become a hero. You have a bad boss. Now make the most of it. He's going to depend on you. So maybe you got to say, look, what can I do to shine in what I'm doing? Because good bosses, bad bosses, they'll come and go. But you need to kind of focus on what you need to do. So don't worry about saying, I have a bad boss, I need to go. I heard you say something about you want to go somewhere else, but you're not sure, or you may not have the resources or the ability to take that shock. That's a separate story. You need to now ask yourself, is that your best chance of success? If it is, go for it. Don't go for it because you have a bad boss. Don't go for it because the money is not good here. Don't go for it because I did get promoted. You should go for it if you think that's what I was meant to do. Okay, you got to, somewhere inside of you, you've got to get that call which says, kya time waste kar raha hai idhar yaar, Just because they're paying you a lot of money and, sending you on that trip abroad, doesn't mean you must be writing code for the rest of your life. Maybe you were meant to play the drums at the bar next door. At least the drinks are free.
I would like you to comment on servant leadership. In other words, each leader, across corporates or NGO or educational institution, he believes he's there to serve. And he's not on the pedestal just preaching down. I want you to comment on servant leadership, which I think is integral.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great point. And I'm sure all of you, if you watch TED videos, there's this recent one about the Taj and how, okay, there's an interesting one. I'm forgetting the name. Rohit Deshpande, I think, is the name of the professor at Harvard who's done this talk about what happened at the Taj on the night of 26 November, when the terrorist attack happened. But to cut a long story short, it talks about what is it about, that bunch of people who were serving at the Taj, waiters, chefs, what is it about them that actually made them stay on and serve, protect people, protect the guests, rather than worry about their own lives? Human psychology says that, when there's trouble, you look for an escape route. And your instinct takes over. Survival instinct takes over, and you want to go out and do something about it. And I think that's one way of looking at service. But look at these guys. They actually, and it's not because it was mentioned in a training manual. It's not because it was, part of their employee contract. That's the way they felt. Why did they do what they did? Tough one to answer. But I think increasingly, and I like that point, that leadership is not about the guy at the top. Leadership is about people down the organization. Leadership is everywhere. And to go back to the story of the tea bag, one of the analogies I made was the fact that you can put a tea bag anywhere in the pot, it'll work. It's a mistake to believe that the tea bag has to be at the top for it to work. Yeah? And I have a story about my driver. I think, good guy. He once got talking to me about, lessons that he's learned in his life. And I thought, hey, you know what? We should get this man to go and deliver the convocation address at a business school, because he had such fantastic advice to offer, including stuff like, he says, when I got a license, I thought it was a chance to now learn to drive. I recognize that getting a license does not make you an expert. Now, most of these guys who come out of business school think they've got a license, an MBA, which makes them experts. They can do what they like from tomorrow morning. They don't need to learn anymore. The truth is that that license is only a chance to now learn what you need to do. And he made another point. He said, you know what? At the end of the day, it's not about what car you drive. It's about how well you drive. You know? And I think great advice for all of us in that sense. Yeah.
Right.
In fact, also I would extend it by saying it's actually also killing off the ego. Many times it's the ego of the people at the top who then speak down to rather than be.
Great point. And I think to be fair to those guys, increasingly you'll find that if ego is a big killer, and it'll make sure it doesn't even let you go to the top, and it'll stop you somewhere much earlier before you get there.
While in USA, I found out that the speed, they make more than 60 miles.
Yeah.
So they fix some sort of a tape recorder to the car. So
Beep.
the moment it increases more than 60,
Yeah.
the wife's voice tells that
Yeah.
I love you, dear, don't go beyond it.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So, and it makes a very big impact. They immediately, the police, they did not wait for the police to come and stop them.
Brilliant one.
So I thought probably the Andhra government has copied, I don't know, but it is affecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody will go better and say, get Kareena Kapoor to say to the driver, So it just might work.
Yeah. And
I
I think
think
here
good one.
what's also working is that the wife is tougher than the police.
That's true. That's very much true. That is very much true.
Yeah.
And they take it very ardently. They say, I love you, dear, don't go stupid. So they come down immediately.
I'm sure when I do an updated version of this soon, I'll include this in that.
Okay.
I think it's a good story.
No, it is a fact, I'm
Sure,
telling you.
sure.
I was in USA.
Sure.
Now that another aspect is, I'm interested to know, you told many things. I am concerned that there is a commitment. Whenever, somebody tells that you do this, we immediately think, what is the excuse that if I don't do? Then what happens? We find out a number of reasons why it cannot be done.
Yeah.
Keep it in our mind.
Yeah.
So you don't do it, you say it cannot be done for a reason. So one of the committees, I told that one project you give it to people, why it cannot be done. And you give to another batch, how it can be done. Suppose you give to the other party, that it cannot be done, it can never be done, which is happening in the government. And then if you do commitment, once you say that I will do it, you close all the doors of excuses. Am I right?
Sure.
So you have to find out ways and means how to do it, and you do it.
Good point.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Good point.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
I really like the way you took lessons from small things around us. Okay, the tea bag example and other anecdotes, the rabbit example. So I just wanted to ask, how do you do it? How do you take, if I would consider a tea bag, I wouldn't have looked at it in such a way. That was a very new thing for me, a new perspective for me. So I wanted to ask, how do you do it? How do you learn?
So you want the secret of writing the book.
So I think it's a great question. I think it's just I guess we all, like I said, I don't think I couldn't have been several other things in my life, and I could have said, hey, I'm a failure because I couldn't do 100 other things. This is something that's probably struck me, and I'd probably say it this way, that over the years that I've been at work, and I've found that stories work. Stories are very powerful. Yeah. So if I'm telling a team, you know what, that's the way to do it, guys. Come on, don't give up. Yay, whoa. Everyone sits, listens, shakes their head, and goes out and does the same things. But tell them a story, and suddenly the story kind of sticks. It's memorable. It also takes the blame away, because if I tell you, you are like this, you are like that, you are this, you're rejecting all of it. But if I tell you about, this other kid somewhere else who did something and then it turned well, you say, now, I'm listening in because the other kid, and now it can work for me. So I think stories are extremely powerful. And I find that, like I said, it's now become almost like I listen to a line somewhere and I say, wow, this could be an interesting one. And and you build on that line and then try and link it back to what might happen. So it works, and I'm glad you enjoyed it or you liked it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being a great audience, and thank you, Prakash.